With what magic can you triumph over him? Asked the king, and Goat Strength replied, I'm going to wage with him the contest of bathing in a cauldron of hot oil. The king indeed sent for a huge cauldron filled with fragrant oil and told them to begin the contest. I thank you for your kindness, said Pilgrim. For this young priest has not had a bath for a long time. My skin, in fact, has been rather dried and itchy these past 2 days, and I must have it scalded to take away the irritation. The attendant before the throne indeed lighted a great fire on a huge pile of wood, and the oil in the cauldron was heated to boiling. When he was asked to step into it, Pilgrim pressed his palms together in front of him and asked, Will it be a civil or a military bath? What's the difference? Asked the king. Pilgrim said, A civil bath means that I shall not remove my clothing. With my hands on my hips, I'll jump in and jump out again after one little roll so swiftly, in fact, that the clothes are not permitted to be soiled. If there's the tiniest speck of oil on the garments, I lose. A military bath, however, will require a clothes rack and a towel. I'll undress before I dive in, and I shall be permitted to play in there as I wish, including doing somersaults and cartwheels. The king said to Goat Strength, How do you want to compete with him? A civil or a military bath? If we take the civil bath, said Goat Strength, I fear that his robes may have been treated so that oil will slide off him. Let's have the military bath. Stepping forward instantly, Pilgrim said, Pardon me again for the presumption of taking my turn first. Look at him. He took off his shirt and untied his tiger skin kilt. With a bound, he leapt straight into the cauldron, splashing and frolicking in the boiling oil as if he were swimming in it. When 8 Rules saw this, he bit his finger and said to Sha Monk, We truly have misjudged this ape. During those sarcastic exchanges and the banter between us all this time, I thought he was simply joking. Little did I realize that he really had such ability. They could hardly refrain from their marveling, but when Pilgrim saw them whispering back and forth to each other, he became highly suspicious and thought to himself, That idiot must be laughing at me. This is what the proverb means, intelligence has its work and incompetence its leisure. Old Monkey has to go through all this, and he's quite comfortable over there. Let me put some ropes on him and see whether he'll be more cautious. As he bathed himself, he suddenly dove toward the bottom of the cauldron with a splash. There he changed himself into a small tack and all but disappeared. The officer in charge of the proceedings went forward again to make the report. Your Majesty, the young priest has been fried to death by the boiling oil. Delighted, the king gave the order for the bones to be fished out for him to see, and the executioner went forward to rake the oil with an iron strainer. The holes in the strainer, however, were quite large, whereas the tack into which Pilgrim had changed himself was very tiny, and repeatedly it fell through the holes after it had been scooped up. The officer had no choice but to come back with this word. The priest's body is tender, and his bones are frail. He seems to have melted completely. The king at once shouted, Seize those 3 monks. Seeing how savage were the looks of 8 Rules, the palace guards rushed at him first and threw him to the ground, tying both of his hands behind his back. Tripitaka was so terrified that he cried out in a loud voice, Your Majesty, please pardon this humble cleric for the moment. Since that disciple of mine embraced our faith, he has made merit again and again. Today his affront to the preceptor of state has led to his death in a cauldron of oil, and this humble cleric certainly has no desire to cling to my own life. Moreover, just as the officials are ruling over the people, so are you the ruler above all, and if you as king ask me, your subject, to die, how could I dare not die? But the one who died first has already become a spirit, and this is the reason I beg you for a moment's grace. Grant me half a cup of cold water or a bowl of thin gruel. Give me also 3 paper horses and permit me to go before the cauldron to present these offerings and to express my regard for him as a disciple. Then I will accept whatever punishment you have for me. On hearing this, the king said, All right. The Chinese are a very loyal people indeed. He asked that the Tang monk be given the rice gruel and paper money. The Tang monk requested that Sha monk go with him below the steps, while a few of the guards dragged 8 rules by the ears up to the cauldron. Facing it, the Tang monk offered the following invocation. My dear disciple, Sun Wukong, since taking precepts at the Grove of Chan, what love you showed me on our westward way. We hoped jointly to perfect the great Tao. How could I know you would perish this day? You lived for finding scriptures when alive. In death your mind from Buddha must not stray. Your gallant soul afar should wait to rise. To thunderclap as ghost from Hades' dark sway. On hearing this prayer, 8 rules said, Master, that's not the proper invocation. Sha monk, hold up the rice offering for me. Let me pray. Bound and pinned to the ground, idiot gasped out these words. You brazen, disaster-courting ape. You ignorant ban-horse plague. You brazen, death-deserving ape. You deep-fried ban-horse plague. Monkey is bumped off. Horse plagues uprooted. Pilgrim's son was, of course, still in the bottom of the cauldron. When he heard these castigations from idiot, he could no longer restrain himself and at once changed back into his original form. Standing up stark naked in the cauldron, he shouted, You overstuffed coolie! Whom are you castigating? Disciple, said the Tang monk when he saw Pilgrim. You almost frightened me to death. Sha monk said, Elder brother simply loves to play dead. The civil and military officials all rushed up the steps to report. Your Majesty, that priest did not die. He has emerged again from the cauldron. Fearing that he might be found guilty of making a false report to the throne, the officer in charge of execution said, He is dead, all right. But today happens to be a rather inauspicious day, and the ghost of that young priest is now manifesting itself. Maddened by what he heard, Pilgrim leapt out of the cauldron, dried himself from the oil, and threw on his clothes. Dragging that officer over, he whipped out his iron rod, and one blow on the head reduced him to a meat patty. What ghost is this who's manifesting itself? He huffed. Those officials were so terrified that they freed 8 rules at once and knelt on the ground, pleading, Pardon us. Pardon us. The king, too, wanted to leave his dragon throne, but he was caught by Pilgrim, who said, Your Majesty, don't walk away. Tell your 3rd preceptor of state to go into the cauldron also. Trembling all over, the king said, 3rd preceptor of state, save our life. Go into the cauldron quickly so that the monk won't hit us. Goat Strength went down the steps from the hall and took off his clothes like Pilgrim. Leaping into the cauldron of boiling oil, he began to cavort and bathe himself. Letting go of the king, Pilgrim approached the cauldron and told the fire tenders to add more wood while he put his hand into the oil. Aha! That boiling oil felt ice cold. He thought to himself. It was very hot when I took the bath, but feel how cold it is now that he's washing in there. I know. It has to be some dragon king who is giving him protection here. Leaping into the air, he recited a spell that began with the letter O, and instantly summoned the dragon king of the northern ocean to his side. You horn-growing earthworm, said Pilgrim to him. You scaly lizard. How dare you assist that Taoist by coiling a cold dragon around the bottom of the cauldron? You want him to display his power and gain the upper hand on me. Terribly intimidated, the Dragon King stammered out his answer. Aoshun dares not do that. Perhaps the great sage has no knowledge of this. This cursed beast did go through quite an austere process of self-cultivation, to the point where he was able to cast off his original shell. He has acquired the true magic of the 5 thunders, while the rest of the magic powers he has are all those developed by heterodoxy, none fit to lead him to the true way of the immortals. The performance of this right now is also part of the great ripoff, which he has learned in the Little Mao Mountain, but the magic of his 2 associates had already been destroyed by the great sage and they had to reveal their original forms. This cold dragon, which he has managed to cultivate by himself, may deceive worldly folks, but how could it ever deceive the great sage? I shall arrest that cold dragon at once, and you can be certain that he will be deep-fried, bones, skins, and all. Take him away," said Pilgrim, "and you'll be spared a whipping." Changing into a violent gust of wind, the Dragon King swooped down to the cauldron and dragged the cold dragon back to the ocean. Pilgrim dropped down from the air and stood again before the steps with Tripitaka, 8 Rules, and Sha Monk. They saw that the Taoist was bobbing up and down in the oil, but his desperate efforts to get out were all to no avail. Every time he climbed up the wall of the cauldron, he would slip back down. In no time at all, his flesh dissolved, his skin was charred, and his bones left his body. "Your Majesty." Another officer in charge of execution went forward to report. "The third preceptor of state has passed away." As tears streamed from his eyes, the king clutched at the imperial table before him and sobbed uncontrollably, crying, "The human form is hard, hard indeed, to get. Make no elixir when there's no true guide. You have charms and water to send for gods, but not the pill to make your life abide. If perfection's undone, could Nerva A be won?"